All right, without further ado, we'll go ahead and welcome our speakers. Beth Smith and Linda Bass are here from Adairsville. Beth Smith graduated from Jacksonville State University in her home state of Alabama. We'll forgive you.
Hey, go Gamecocks, they beat Florida Seminoles this last weekend, so.
Smith's educational career began in 1980 when she became a kindergarten teacher at Pine Log Elementary School. She retired in 2009 as the principal of Calhoun Primary School. In between, she was a teacher at Mission Road and a counselor at Taylorsville Elementary and a program specialist at the State Department of Education in Atlanta. After retiring from education, Beth joined the Souci Club in Adairsville and was part of the collaboration between Adairsville and KSU in the club to restore and reorganize the Adairsville Depot Museum. Beth and her husband Gary have lived in Adairsville for 19 years, but recently moved back to Cartersville to be closer to family, and they enjoy retirement and watching 8 grandchildren. Linda had moved to Adairsville in 1968 to begin her career in teaching. She taught French and English for 34 years at Adairsville High School and French for 1 year at Cass High. She will be conducting today's presentation in French.
I will have a phrase, I speak in French.
Bass joined the Souci Club in 1998 and has held various offices in the club, including president, vice president, and secretary. She and her husband Ken, also a retired teacher, have one daughter who is a teacher in Floyd County. Please join me in welcoming Linda and Beth.
All right, hold it like this. Okay. Thanks, Trey, and thank you for the invitation to come and speak today. Beth and I are very happy to be here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the club and touch a little bit on the service that we do in the community. And then Beth's going to follow up with much more detail of what we do at the depot, because that's our big project now. Well, the Souci Women's Club has been on the Adairsville scene for 107 years. It was organized in 1914 as a social club and was comprised of about 20 members. One of the founding members at the time was Alice Butler. I have a picture of Alice Butler Howard when she was 86 years old, and I'll be showing that to you very shortly. But it was Mrs. Howard, who was more affectionately known as Miss Topsy in the Adairsville community. Miss Topsy was a local author and historian, and it was she, and this is Miss Topsy at age 86. This picture was taken in 1980. Now, we also have, before I tell you about the club and her part in the naming of the club, her granddaughter, Alice, is in attendance today. So we're glad to have Alice here. I'm just going to lay these right here for now. All right. Well, it was Miss Topsy who suggested the name of the club. I don't know if they had a contest, and had all these entries, but Miss Topsy, being the author and historian that she was, selected a French phrase to be the title of the name of the club. And that French phrase was sans souci, which means without care. Because this little group of ladies, they sort of started as a party club, social club, and they would get together to play cards. So, they were without care. Those that were already married, of course, their husbands were out earning money, so these little ladies wanted to socialize and get together. So she came up with the name Sans Souci. Now, I don't know if they ever pronounced it Sans Souci, which is the actual pronunciation, or if they, like our generation, has southernized it to become San Souci. But the name has always been an appropriate name for this club. And of course, the club started out with the ladies playing cards. Now, they first began to meet in a private home. And this is the home where they first met. This is the home of Mr. and Mrs. R.L. Franklin on College Street. It sits directly and has sat directly across the street from the schools. When I came there, it was grades 1 through 12. Now, of course, Adairsville Elementary School sits on that lot, and this sits on College Street directly across from the school. So this is where the meetings first took place. I have a picture of Mr. and Mrs. R.L. Franklin because it was their home in which they met for some time. No doubt, Mr. Franklin, who looks like a nice man, no doubt he got tired of these card-playing ladies meeting in his living room frequently. So he became the primary mover in the project to build the clubhouse. So he approached several members of the community, one of which was Mr. H.M. Veach. Now, Mr. Veach donated the land at the corner of Park Street and Railroad Street, directly across from the depot, as the site for the clubhouse. And a Mr. D.W. Loudermilk gave the money for the construction cost. Now, I don't know if this Mr. Loudermilk is related to our U.S. representative or not. Maybe someone else knows that. I just know his name was D.W. Loudermilk. So, with their help, the clubhouse was completed in 1916. Now, I have a picture, which is a picture of a picture on a post on one of the big placards in the depot that was done by Kennesaw State. This is what the clubhouse, and it's a very grainy look. This was taken in 1921. This is a picture of the clubhouse in 2021. So it's come a long way. Basically the same building, but it looks a lot better in color in the summer with leaves and a blue sky. All right, well, after the clubhouse was completed, the members moved in, and they decided that maybe playing cards and socializing was something they didn't need to do all the time. So they decided they needed to perhaps do things that were more in service to the community. So someone came up with the idea of forming a lending library. Now, I don't know who came up with that idea. Maybe it was a joint effort. But shortly after 1916, the Souci Women's Club began operating a lending library. Now, to start with, the Lend a Hand mission of Boston provided many books for this new library. Club members and also members of the community donated books from their own collections. And the first books that were actually purchased were paid for with money earned from the sale of chickens and eggs. Well, the library flourished, and the library served patrons for miles around. And many of those at that time had to walk miles to come into town to borrow books. The library flourished, and members began holding regular meetings on the third Thursday of each month for 10 months out of the year. We still adhere to that schedule today. Our meetings are always the third Thursday of every month except August and January, when there are no meetings. And usually in December we meet the week earlier, so it's not so close to Christmas. But other than that, we're still in keeping with those meeting schedules. Now, the clubhouse, once it was completed, not only served as a library, but it served as a venue back in those days for community activities, and the members of the club hosted a variety of parties dances, oyster suppers, and delicious dinners in order to raise funds for the library. Now, in 1922, the club members installed a radio in the clubhouse. This gave the townspeople an opportunity to hear the news and to hear high-class lectures and music that were broadcast every night. The first beauty shop in Adairsville was located in one section of the clubhouse. And the first public restroom in Adairsville was also in the clubhouse. Now, in 1964, and we're still doing the library now through all these years, but in 1964, the members of the Souci created an historical committee to document the town's history. Now, this committee was comprised of 6 members, all of who resided inside the city limits. In 1985, the committee began a major project to nominate Adairsville's historic district for inclusion into the National Register of Historic Places. The committee ramrodded this project, and they spent many hours doing extensive research, and they completed a comprehensive historical survey of all eligible properties within the district. The designation was awarded in the summer of 1986, and Adairsville was the first town in Georgia to be named in its entirety to the National Register of Historic Places. Now, that does not mean the whole town, because we have grown, but as far as like in Cartersville, I know you have various historic districts, maybe the Cassville Road area, and then over West Avenue, is it, over in that area? There are different neighborhoods that have historic, that are named to the National Register. But for Adairsville, it's not a particular neighborhood, it's the whole town, but not the whole town, just the historic part of town. Well, the club members and the club itself ceased operation of the library, which has been going on during all this. They ceased operation of the library in 1994 when the Bartow County library system opened a new library in Adairsville on North Main Street. So after almost 80 years, the club members were finally free from care concerning the responsibilities and financial worries of operating a library. Today, the Souci Club continues to embody an energy for community service and an appreciation of community history and tradition. Club members serve as docents and guides for the city of Adairsville at the Historic Depot, and this is what Beth is going to share with you later. We also give financial support to community programs like Backpack Buddies, Toys for Tots. We've gotten involved in the Little Free Libraries now. We have several of those located around Adairsville, and our members donate books and things for that. And of course, we continue to support the Adairsville Public Library as needed. And sometimes that need involves financial support, and sometimes it involves members supplying refreshments or materials for particular programs, especially children's programs that they have at the Adairsville Public Library. Of course, all of that has sort of been put on hold for the last year or so. For almost 25 years, the Souci Women's Club has awarded a scholarship to an Adairsville High School graduating senior. 6 years ago, we made that scholarship a recurring one thus giving financial support for all 4 years of college. And so far, we have had 2 recipients who have gone through all 4 years of college and have received our financial backing. Now, I think I have answered most of the questions that you sent, Trey, but one of the questions you asked were how many presidents the Souci Women's Club has had. Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that since 1978, so 43 years ago, for the past 43 years, there have been 15 presidents. Now, some of those presidents have served multiple terms or continuous terms. I know I have served 5 different times. Some of those were like maybe 2 years at a time. Beth served for 2 years. Our current president, and I was hoping that she could come today, our current president is Anna Sullivan, also our Adairsville representative. It's very dark, and the women have on very dark clothes, but this is a picture of the early club. Now, I'm not sure when it was taken. I'm not sure what this festive event was, but they don't look very happy. But, of course, back in those days, nobody ever smiled anyway. But anyway, this is a picture of the Souci Women's Club, and we'll put these up in case you want to come up and look closer back early on. We also have a current picture of the Souci Women's Club. This picture was taken back in April at our meeting, and it was a meeting in which we dedicated a piece of artwork, a painting that is behind us on the walls. It is a painting done by one of our members, Patricia Easton. She did it in memory of another one of our members, Joyce Culberson, who passed away in May of 2020. And this was presented to the club, and of course her family was invited, and the gentleman in the picture here is Earl Culberson, Joyce's husband. So this is a current picture, fairly current picture, not all the members, but quite a few of them. And my last picture leads us to Beth's part. This is a picture of our historic depot. If you've not been to Adairsville in a while, or ever, our depot has gone through did go through many years of neglect, and then the city of Adairsville purchased it and turned it into a museum and welcome center. We have a mural on the side that was painted by one of our local artists. He calls himself a part-time artist. And another artist from Calhoun painted this scene of the Great Locomotive Chase, and it is attached to the wall of the depot. And that was, this mural was, I think, put up in April of 2011, and it was a year later that the sesquicentennial of the Great Locomotive Chase took place, the 150th anniversary, and the city of Adairsville and the depot was involved in some of the activities that took place during that weekend of April to commemorate that historic event. All right, well, that's all I have to say. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the history, but I'll turn it over to Beth, and then, oh, yes. We currently have about 25 members. Now, we have had as many as 50, but I don't know, it seems like all organizations are having a hard time these days. Of course, COVID hasn't helped, but it seems like a lot of clubs are having a hard time keeping members or getting members. And I think one of the questions that you did send, Trey, had to do with how someone gets to be a member. Well, it's kind of one of those member-only type things. To become a member, you have to be invited, and it shouldn't be that, I guess, anymore, but to be a member, you have to be invited by another member and come to the meeting, and then if you're interested in becoming a member, we vote you in. So it's kind of one of those members-only things. But yeah, we're very much down now in with the number of our members, and we have quite a few retired ladies, because I did not retire. I mean, did not join until I was pretty much retired from teaching, and but we have several retired educators. We also have women that are still working, and a variety of jobs. So it's kind of an interesting combination. Any other questions on the history? All right, I'll get my stuff out of the way.
As Linda is moving, I have the same story as Linda. I retired from my job, and we had moved to Adairsville, but didn't really know a lot of people because I was working. And so someone said, in our neighborhood, said, you need to come to the Souci. And I was going, what is the Souci? And so I went to a meeting and met Linda and the crowd there, and I haven't looked back because it was a great experience for me to get to know the ladies of Adairsville, and so anybody that is interested, it is members only and it is invitation, but if you're interested, we want you there. So hopefully there will be some more folks showing interest in that.
Can I butt in and say one thing? When I first moved to Adairsville in 1968, I kind of found the name of the club not only interesting because it was French and I was a French teacher, but there happened to be a strip club in Atlanta called the Souci. So I thought, well, maybe this is where the strippers go when they retire. But evidently that was wrong in that part. But I thought it was very funny that two things completely different.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as Linda said, the Without a Care kind of went by the wayside when we became a service organization back in the day. And so our service project, as she mentioned too, beginning in 2013 became the Docents, we became the Docents at the depot. The city was so kind to allow us to do that. They came to us, and I met with Pat Crook at the time. She was the city manager. And the depot had been closed, and she came with a proposal of possibly opening the depot and us working there. So it all has worked out well. The depot, as Linda had said, had wonderful artifacts. I mean, just beautiful artifacts in there, but they were just scattered here and there. No real organization. And for those of us who were not from Adairsville and did not know the history, trying to learn the history as we went, it was just a little confusing. And so we did keep the depot open from 2013 till 2016, and invited visitors in and shared what we knew. But in the meantime, the depot committee from Souci got together and said, you know, we need some help with this. And this is just my feeling on the subject. God always puts people in your path that you need, I feel like. And so ironically, Alice, I was taking a pickleball class at Berry College and met Miss Alice. And anyway, long story short, she led us to Jennifer Dickey at Dr. Dickey at KSU. And she's in the public history department there, and she wanted to meet with us, thank goodness, about doing some renovation and reorganization there at the depot. So the depot committee met with Dr. Dickey, loved her from the get-go, and she listened to us, we listened to her. The proposal was made in 2016 to the city council to reorganize with Dr. Dickey, her classes, and her constituents there at KSU. And so the project began. We were so excited about it and have not been sorry one bit that took place. So now, in 2017, we had a grand reopening after all the work that Dr. Dickey and her class and colleagues did. And we reopened as the Adairsville Depot History Museum and Welcome Center. And so we, of course, welcome people from all over now. Our local folks were very, very complimentary of what had been done, and of course the people coming from, and we do have people from all over the world walk in the door with manufacturing. We have people coming to manufacturing plants. They're in the Darrisville, and they're from Japan, or they're from, all over the place, and they'll come in the door. So it's exciting to see those folks. And as Dr. Dickey was awarded the 2019 Georgia Outstanding Community Engagement Award for her project there, and the name of her project was A Quintessential Southern Small Town, A History of the City of Adairsville. So she did receive that award in 2019, and we were excited for her about that. Today, Souci members remain dedicated to serving the community by meeting and greeting visitors, as I said, from all over. The Etowah Valley Historical Society included the depot on one of the stops during the tour of homes in 2018, and it continues to be a tourism draw for the downtown area, which is under renovation, as Linda, I think, had said earlier. We are hoping that all of the stores in downtown Adairsville, and if you haven't visited, we invite you to do that, but we are hoping that all of those stores will be filled soon. But we've got some really good ones now, so we encourage people to come visit. Of course, with COVID concerns, the numbers have been down, but yesterday, I was telling Trey earlier, 8 people came through on a Tuesday. So, that's a good day for us there for the times right now. So, but we had destination tours come through pre-COVID, and we'd have groups of 30 or more sometimes from different places. So, and those Souci ladies come out and meet and greet, so which is great. Another project, we're back in the day, between the library and the depot, we would try to raise money by doing bake sales or cake walks or dinners, and if you've ever been involved in anything like that, you don't make a lot of money with that. So we still have service projects going on and some money-making projects, and one of them I have on display right here, and that is, they are called rag rugs or remnant rugs. And our curator, Sarah Preeter, who was a former librarian, media specialist, and an avid quilter, and can sew anything. We had a loom, a 1930 antique rug loom donated to the depot. Well, she has that up and running, and our members, while they're working there and in their spare time, actually make these remnant rugs or rag rugs, and then we sell those for $35 a piece. So this was one. Sarah had some scrap materials from my mom. I had a quilt made for her, and so I had scrap materials. And so this was my mom's scraps here for the rug that she made for me. So very sentimental for me too. But we can do those rugs within a matter of a week or two. So it's fun to be a part of that. I mentioned we also serve as a welcome center, so we have all kinds of pamphlets and things that the surrounding area attractions and things, so people are able to pick that up and know where to go in the area. So, as you can see, Souci, which means without a care, is kind of far from our focus. We still carry that, but we do care so much about preserving the wonderful history and heritage of the community of Adairsville, and we do invite you to come anytime to see us. We are open Tuesday through Saturday. Friends of the library often help us on Fridays, every other Friday, so you might see them, but most of the time it's the Souci women there. So I'd love to see y'all at the Darrisville History Museum when you get a chance to come visit.
Well, does everybody know who Topsy Howard is? Did anybody grow up in Adairsville? All right, I have suckers. Okay. So my grandmother was kind of the unofficial town historian. She was a writer. She wrote many books, self-published, about the history of Adairsville. And if that hadn't have happened because the newspaper had burned down, taking away all the history, she had been collecting it all the years. So thank goodness she had that and wrote these books. So she's a good part of the Adairsville history, but I knew the other side of her. And she, there wasn't a lot to do in Adairsville back in, the 20s, like nothing. And so her friends would get together at the house and sit around the dining room table, and they'd go, well, what do you want to do? And they'd go, well, why don't we have a table tapping? And they go, well, how do you do that? So somebody taught them about table tapping, which is kind of like a Ouija board thing that they go around and they ask a question. And so, and I forgot how they do it. They would say letters, and if they heard a tap, they would write the letter down. So then they started getting pretty good at this thing. So one day they sat around and they said, there was the part of the Adairsville history was that there were two Confederate soldiers that were, because the Civil War was raging in this area as well, and there were two Confederate soldiers that were shot and buried at a tree right by the railroad downtown Adairsville. Nobody knew who they were, and it just grieved my grandmother to no end to not know who these people were. So they had a table tapping to find out who these names were, and they actually came up with two names. Two names. So grandmother actually went up to Washington, D.C. to find out if these were the names of soldiers. And they were. And not only that, they ended up that they were actually neighbors that lived, I think, in Virginia. I have to go back and read. In Virginia, these two kids. They had found a note on one of their bodies when they passed away that they could actually confirm one of the soldiers' names. So on her 80th birthday, they had what was called the Great Jubilation. And so they invited all the government people. The Secretary of State came up to Adairsville, and all the Joe Frank Harris came up, and all the haughty-taughty people from the government. And I was young. I think I was in high school then. And they had a 21-gun salute. They had moved the soldiers from that actual spot at the railroad up to the, what is that cemetery? Eastview Cemetery. And they had the burial. And so they have an official headstone for one, and then the name for the other soldier there. So my grandparents did not, so grandmother's parents did not like this table tapping thing. So one time her father got so mad, he goes, if y'all think y'all are so smart, and he was the undertaker for Darrisville at that point, you tell me how Susie Q passed away, because I'm the only one that knows. So they went back to the table and did a little table tapping and came back. She's burned in fire. Because that's it, no more table tapping. So that's the story. So.
Now, was her grandfather Mr. Whitworth?
Yes.
See, he had his funeral home in my house.
Okay. Oh, man, I love Adairsville. I love the history of Adairsville.
Not while I was living there, but...
And you can imagine, I grew up in Atlanta, and having to come to spend a week with my grandmother in the summer was like a torture. It was worse than anything. But I got to know all her friends and all the older people in Adairsville. I never had any young friends, so I can't wait to look at this picture and see if I recognize anybody from the San Souci that many years ago. But it was really a pleasure to know these people. So.
All right, thank you all for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.